130 miles per hour around midday today. The hurricane's wind field is expected to grow with time as it approaches the coast of the Carolinas. The forecast track from the National Hurricane Center has not changed significantly and is still expected to be a large and extremely dangerous hurricane when it makes landfall. While the track shows landfall across southeast North Carolina, it is very important to remember a couple of things. 1. Don't focus on the landfall location depicted in the Hurricane Center forecast. Instead, look at the cone of uncertainty, which shows where the center of the hurricane is likely to go 2/3 of the time. This means the hurricane can still make land the northern or central portions of the South Carolina coast. 2. The cone does not at all imply where impacts from the hurricane will occur. In fact, impacts will extend far from the center of Florence. For example, tropical storm force winds could extend well over 100 miles from the center of the storm, and hurricane force winds could extend 50 miles from the center of the storm, putting much of the state, even well inland, at risk for destructive winds. As for timing, the tropical storm force winds will arrive well in advance of landfall, likely sometime Thursday morning, at which time all preparation should be completed. Landfall along the Carolina coast looks to occur late Thursday or Thursday night. Life-threatening storm surge is likely along portions of the coastline in association with Florence. This is in addition to the high surf and deadly rip current risk, which will continue through the week. Once Florence moves inland, it is expected to weaken and move very slowly, resulting in a prolonged and exceptionally heavy rainfall event along and north of the track. Depending on where the heaviest rain occurs, this could result in significant river flooding across portions of the state into next week. This could be the first Category 4 hurricane to make landfall in the Carolinas since Hugo. Please follow the advice of local emergency management officials for evacuation information. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'd like to point out that we are expecting more wind than we had with Hugo and more water than we had with Matthew. And the soil is moist, in some places it's saturated, and that means that all this water that's going to be coming in on this very high velocity hurricane, which is right now is moving, and we expect to move slowly across the ground when it gets there. It'll be dumping water on us in North Carolina, all of which will come through South Carolina, much of what's in North Carolina. So we're liable to have a whole lot of flooding, particularly in the PD area. So we got the hurricane and the surge, which may be as high as 10 feet, may be more, may be less, we don't know, coming at us from the ocean, and then after that we'll have water coming down, flooding us. So we're in for a real episode here, and what we're emphasizing, we want everybody to be prepared. Your state government, your county governments, all the volunteer organizations like Harvest Hope and Red Cross are in gear working, and we're getting them in place through my executive order and other measures that have been taken. We've got a great team. There's no team greater than the South Carolina team, but this is a real hurricane that we have coming, and our goal is to protect lives and property. Now we know that this evacuation order that I'm issuing is going to be inconvenient for some people. It's going to be inconvenient, but we do not want to risk one South Carolina life in this hurricane. So we're willing to suffer some inconvenience. South Carolina's a great place to live. This may be inconvenient. This is a very dangerous hurricane. But we are not going to gamble with the lives of the people of South Carolina, not a one. That's why we're doing what we're doing. Three main
what about
things.
North Carolina?
Noon tomorrow, September 11th, I have already ordered the mandatory evacuation of all people in all of the evacuation zones. And you see them there on that map. You see all those different colors. That's almost all of the counties along the coast. It affects all 8 counties, and I will read them. You see those zones, and the darker the colors, the more danger there is in those zones. There are 8 counties: Jasper, Beaufort, Colleton, Charleston, Dorchester, Berkeley, Georgetown, and Horry. There are plenty of ways you can go online and find out exactly where your zone is. You can call the authorities, but as of noon tomorrow, I'm ordering a mandatory, not voluntary, but mandatory evacuation of everybody that is in those zones. Now, how are we going to get everybody out? We issue an order for that too. At noon tomorrow, we're going to reverse the lanes on 4 big roads leading from the coast. There are a lot of evacuation routes on different roads leading from the coast. And you can find them online right here with the Emergency Management Division and other places as well. But there are 4 on which we're going to reverse the lanes so that all of the lanes will be leading out. Starting at noon tomorrow, you can't go to the coast on these roads. You've got to come away from the coast. And they are I-26 leading from Charleston all the way to Columbia will be one way, and that's away from Charleston. Highway 501 in Myrtle Beach will also be reversed, leaving Myrtle Beach, not going to Myrtle Beach. Then highways 278 and 21 in Beaufort County will be ready for reversal with people standing by at noon, and we'll make the decision then whether to reverse at that moment or to do so later. So those are the 4 roads that will be reversed. I've also issued an executive order to get people out of the way and to make way for the people. It'll be about 1 million people, we think, will be leaving the coast trying to escape this big hurricane. About 1 million people. So we have to clear the roads and get people out of the way so these can come through. And also, by closing some of these offices, the people in those offices, those state offices, can work in the emergency management capacities that they already work in. I've ordered the closing of government offices, state government offices, not county, state government offices, not municipal, but state government offices in 26 counties, except for essential emergency personnel. Those counties are shown in red here. There's 26 of them, and I'll read them to you. These are in alphabetical order. They're Aiken, Allendale, and these offices will not be open tomorrow at all. The schools, the state offices and the schools will not be open at all tomorrow. The roads and all those are for 12 noon tomorrow. But these offices, state offices and schools in these counties won't open at all. Those people need to be preparing for this hurricane. Aiken, Allendale, Bamberg, Beaufort, Barnwell, Berkeley, Calhoun, Charleston, Colleton, Clarendon, Darlington, Dillon, Dorchester, Florence, Georgetown, Hampton, Horry, Jasper, Lexington, Lee, Marion, Marlboro, Orangeburg, Richland, Sumter, and Williamsburg. We don't want the school children in harm's way. We're going to have to use some of those school buses, so we have to close the schools. We're going to need some of those schools for evacuation shelters. It'll be set up, so the school has to be out. And as I say, in the state offices, there are a lot of emergency personnel who work in state offices who will be on the scene tomorrow working with the team around South Carolina to keep things safe for the rest of us. The county governments will decide when, and the municipal governments will decide when to close their offices. One more thing is I've issued the order already, and it is in effect for mandatory medical evacuation of all hospitals and medical facilities, and that includes nursing homes in these areas in the earlier map.
Like I said, guys,
the evacuation areas.
Right there,
evacuation
where
zones.
I'm at.
They are to begin moving already. We issued that order earlier today. So that's you have it. I need to say that our South Carolina team is experienced. They're dedicated. They work enormously well together. We've had experience recently, and I don't think anybody can do it any better than we can. But what we must remember is this hurricane is coming. And you can't look out the window and see it right now from Columbia where we are. But if you were to go out there in the ocean, before long, you might find winds of 155, 145 miles an hour, and we know it's going to hit somewhere to have a dramatic impact on South Carolina. Whether if it hits closer to North Carolina, then we still know that throughout South Carolina we'll have heavy rains, we'll have heavy winds, we're going to have power lines down. People, we need to prepare. We still have time now to prepare. We urge you to do that. General Livingston.
Thank you, Governor.
Team South Carolina is moving into position. The entire team, the team you see.
Governor of South Carolina that you are listening to, and again, South Carolina taking immediate steps to prepare their residents and their visitors, Liana, in the wake of Hurricane Florence.
Yeah, they're taking the necessary precautions because this is a dangerous storm.
Dangerous.
And no matter which direction, you will feel the impacts if you are in South Carolina or even in North Carolina, where there will be some major impacts, including the storm surge, the winds, as well as the heavy rain, and the flood potential is definitely there.
And these are some of the key messages that the governor was saying. They're going to start contraflow on some of the major highways leading away from the coast, including Interstate 26. This will start tomorrow at noon, so you're not going to be able to drive towards the coast from Charleston to Myrtle Beach. And again, you can visit the state website for more information on this. This also includes Highway 501 near Myrtle Beach, and they're going to have updates at noon on Beaufort County Highway 278. That's further south towards Hilton Head Island. They're out of the cone, but they don't want them to be unprepared either. So they may actually enforce evacuation. And by the way, the entire coast of South Carolina, that's everybody on the entire coast, to be evacuated. Mandatory evacuation that will start tomorrow at noon, and 26 counties closed for government offices and schools so that they can start preparing shelters and getting people to have to evacuate a safe spot.
Yeah, and now is the time to prepare you and your family because this is still several days, a couple of days out from when Florence will be making landfall, but now is the time to really prepare. We'll continue to talk about how you can prepare throughout this next hour, but let's go ahead and get the latest on the details with Hurricane Florence right now with meteorologist Chris Warren.
Yeah, and I want to talk about something here. The fact that they're, reversing some of the interstates, an illustration of how serious this is, not just at the coast but inland. So also want to remind you that if you are evacuating from the coast, do not tune out this event because there's a chance you could be evacuating into another area that is just as dangerous and life-threatening.
Right there, right above
but
Charlotte.
for different reasons.
Where I'm at.
Wind and
Hope it don't
surge
come
at the
up this
coast,
way.
but inland flooding is going to be a real concern. So make sure after you evacuate that you are aware of what's going on as far as the amount of rain that could be heading your area and the potential for some very serious flooding. Now, tomorrow's Tuesday, and at noon Tuesday, again, Interstate 26 out of Charleston, Interstate 50, or is that 501, I should say, 501 out of Myrtle Beach, both sides of the interstate are going away from those cities. Now, that's Tuesday, tomorrow at noon. It's possible some of the tropical storm force winds, there's a 50% chance or greater that we could see some of the tropical storm force winds as early as late Wednesday. It's not a lot of time between when the evacuation orders are given or set into effect, I should say, and when some of the initial stormy conditions begin. So this is going to happen much sooner. It seems like we're a few days away. We are from landfall. Late Thursday is what we're looking at. But some of the stormy conditions are going to be happening pretty soon. And when you look essentially at what is like the enemy, you try to assess what's out there, we're looking at a beast. This is a Category 4 hurricane that has the potential for getting even stronger, and which is scary to think when we look at this thing right here, and you look at this high-resolution satellite, and you can see down some of those dark spots. That's the ocean. That's looking down through the clouds. So this thing is an absolute beast right now as it is slowly spinning and moving closer and closer to the United States. And our weather producer, Brandon Wright, brought up a very interesting point, the fact that you've got people in this storm right now. Hurricane hunters are flying this storm, and they are flying, I mean, we're talking in it and through it. And they are doing their best to collect the data so we can have better forecasts for you. And this is a look, again, at that information. The forecast we get, the information we get from the National Hurricane Center, the hurricane hunters there, winds at 130 miles an hour. Again, this is a Category 4. About the impacts. Again, the tropical storm force winds, possible late Wednesday across parts of this region. But as far as where we see the actual landfall, it's going to be sometime Thursday, most likely late Thursday.
Again, guys,
and
I'm
it
right
does,
there
unfortunately, look like
in
there
the
will be a
freaking
landfall.
red.
We're seeing
So, yeah,
fewer
we'll
and
get it.
fewer options that this is going to turn away from land, and it's going to be very close to land as a very strong storm. So initially, the wind and the surge that at the coast, and then the story is going to evolve into inland flooding and that threat. And the chances there'll be tropical storm force winds, it's 90% in these areas, parts of North Carolina. This can still shift here in a few days. And then the hurricane wind probabilities, and this is better than 50% in some areas here in parts of North Carolina. And again, you have to stress, there is the potential this could shift, and also this could shift as well. Liana, we look at some unfortunately incredible and potentially very dangerous, disastrous rainfall amounts, which of course means the flood threat is very real, well inland from the coast.
Yeah, and officials are already preparing for that across the Carolinas. Now is the time to get ready for Hurricane Florence as it approaches the East Coast. Pretty much, you could see some impacts anywhere along the East Coast. And state officials in North Carolina are encouraging people along the coast to know what their evacuation zones are, because storm surge, that's a big concern. Joining us right now via Skype with People's Reaction is Outer Banks Voice News Director Sam Walker. Sam, thanks again for joining us. And again, it's absolutely stunning back there. I mean, it looks like a picture-perfect day at the beach. But I'm sure there's probably a little bit of a buzz going on with people who are out there trying to enjoy their last couple of beach days. How are people mobilizing and getting ready ahead of the storm?
Well, as much as people are getting ready for the storm and traffic is headed north and headed off the Outer Banks, has really picked up. People are lined up at gas stations. It's like just as many people sitting out here enjoying the beach because we got a nice onshore breeze, about 85 degrees. The air temperature, water temperature is 81. Problem is, it's really, really nasty out there and not somewhere people should be. As you see, there's no swimming flags are up today, so anyone above their knees does not need to be in the ocean. Don't go above your knees. Surfers, the only ones that are out there. But for the most part, people are taking this very seriously, fueling up, getting their emergency supplies done, cleaning up the yard, getting all that debris that can fly around, taken care of. And then tomorrow, now that we have an evacuation order, and the folks that are going to leave are going to leave, and the ones that are going to stay and hunker down, like those of us who've grown up here, and so many of us will stay, just because that's what we do with hurricanes, hunker down and get ready, maybe even actually enjoy a beach day. But for the most part, people are taking this very seriously.
Now, overall, I mean, this season, it started off so slow. Now, do you get a feeling that people have been kind of like, oh, it's kind of like lulled into just kind of a calm a little bit? Or are people actually doing something about it? We've been showing people showing video of people getting the water, getting gas, and really starting to hunker down.